generally there is continuous noise about immigration matters. For example, or immigration related. For about a year now, there has been legal fights which have not been resolved yet about the census. As you know, every 10 years we have a census.
Yes.
And the next census will be in 2020, in about 1 year from now. Actually, they need to send out the questionnaires pretty soon. For the first time in maybe 30 or 40 years, the government decided to include a question in the census whether anybody in the household is a non-citizen, is not an American citizen. And there's a big fight going on about it because there are people and organizations who claim that this is unconstitutional because the Constitution mandates the counting of people. You need to count people, not citizens, in order to be able to manage the country. And the government all of a sudden wants to insert this question, who is a citizen and who is not. So this is still waiting for a decision by the Supreme Court of the United States. It's a very important question because many budget issues and many voting issues and many issues having to do with representation in Congress are based on the results of the census. And if there is such a question about citizenship, maybe it is true that certain people will avoid answering the census, people will avoid being counted, and it will damage, create many, it will have a big impact in many fields. So what will going on, the picture we are seeing, which I can predict, is that in the next year and a half until the elections, there will not be much changes in the immigration law, but there will be much noise about immigration. Lots of to-do, lots of commotion, lots of announcement, lots of legal fights about immigration. I don't think there will be much changes in the law, but there will be a lot of noise about immigration.
You're hearing from Attorney Jack Golan of Popkin, Shamir, and Golan Law Offices, and he can be contacted at 213-383-3222. We are on our program, Immigration Update on the Air. You mentioned earlier about the asylum cases, Attorney Golan. Is there a talk somehow for those applying for refugee that their applications can be processed and they have to wait, or they can wait from in their original countries?
It is very easy to confuse between two types of application.
Okay.
There is a refugee application and there's an asylum application. A refugee application is for people who are outside of the U.S. If you are in the Philippines or in Afghanistan or in Iraq or in Mexico, and you want to get this kind, and you want to get a residence in the U.S. based on a claim of political persecution or religious persecution, you have to apply at the American consulate, and then you are considered a refugee. This is a refugee application. If you are inside the U.S. and make such an application, this is an application for asylum. Now, until now, the law has been and still is that even doesn't matter how you entered the U.S., even if you entered the U.S. illegally, even if you came sneaking across the border, once you are in the U.S., you are entitled to apply for asylum, and you are entitled to stay in the U.S. until a judge makes a decision about your application. So all those caravans or tens of thousands of people who are coming to the U.S. from Central America in the last year or so, if they arrive at the border, cross the border, and surrender to an immigration officer, are entitled to apply for asylum and are entitled to wait in the U.S. Now comes the Trump administration, the present government, and says, we want to keep them outside of the U.S. We want to tell them to wait outside of the U.S. This is against the law, and that doesn't happen. However, people who arrive let's say, from Central America and go to a border station and file an application, previously they were permitted to enter the U.S. and wait in the U.S. Now they tell them, if you are at the border station and make an application for asylum, you have to wait in Mexico until we make a decision in your case. All this is still in flux. We don't really know how the courts are going to decide it. But again, it contributes to the noise about immigration.